a really, really, really hard-line, dramatic moment in the family was the event that happened with Walter and Frank. I mean, it was like almost cleaved the history of the family in half.
Yeah.
Before that and after that.
Yes.
And though you all would recognize it, or you seem to be very aware of recognizing it, that it was Frank, and I'm presuming a lot of that came from Frida talking that way with the boys.
I don't remember her even ever mentioned, other than to say that he had a psychological problem.
How much?
But I never heard her
Yeah, I mean, how
say
much more
a negative comment about him, other than that he had a problem.
Did it affect your ability to come and visit the family? Did you come as often? Did you basically stay away after that?
You were pretty much gone from it.
Yeah.
Because you were in college, and as soon as you were through, you were in Europe.
Yeah.
He wasn't
And then
through
the war.
college. He was in his senior year. The draft board was waiting to grab him the day he graduated. He went down to Bendix in South Bend, Indiana, got a job on Bendix tours, and were out in New Guinea before the draft board got a chance to issue your draft notice. And boy, were they ticked when in Muskegon draft you because you were off in New Guinea. Do you recall
Well,
that?
more or less. That's
Okay.
a
Synopsis.
short version of it. But the fact was that I had gone down. I was in my last year, senior year, and I knew that in World War I, people who were in their senior year and then weren't able to finish it because of the war, they got their credits for if they were there for more than the last half of the final term, they got the credits for the whole term. And so I gambled on that and decided I would go off to Detroit to apply for the
Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
the American Field Service.
AFS.
What his influence there, be an ambulance driver.
And I was in that, but they weren't interested. So I was hitchhiking back to Lansing, to East Lansing, and got a ride with a guy. And at this point, I, of course, had been for a year in Europe, most of it in Hitler's Germany, and there was practically nobody who had that experience except newspaper reporters and so forth. And so I'd been doing a lot of public relations work on that. So because at that point I believed that Hitler was a menace to humanity, and like it or not, and difficult as it was or not, Hitler had to be stopped. It was too late to negotiate. The time for negotiating that was the time of the Versailles Treaty and thereafter. But once the fire, it's like the house is a fire, you got to put out the fire. And so I was in that position, and so I wasn't drafted yet. I was thinking of going over ambulance service, and got a ride with a guy who I was talking about my European experience and so on. And a little before we got to East Lansing, he said, "Well, what are you doing? What are your plans and so forth? Well, would you be interested in a job going overseas on aircraft maintenance work?" I guess somewhere he picked up that I had machine shop experience and so on. And he said, "Here's my card. Go down to South Bend, Indiana, and give this card in the gun turret division. And if they don't take you there, then go across to the carburetor. No, to the carburetor.
Oh.
What was the
Stromberg Carlson?
Stromberg Carlson carburetor. And so I went down there, and the first door I knocked on, I was hired. And so I dropped out of school and got put into an intensive training course on gun turret maintenance, and actually went up and worked on the B-25s that are urgent, get them in shape up at what was the name of the air base up at St. Paul, Minnesota?
I don't
Twin Cities. Anyway, there was an air base up there, and we worked day and night and slept on the packing crates in the hangar until we could get back and go back to work on those things. And later we found out those were the B-25s that Doolittle used on
30 seconds over Tokyo.
Yeah, the 30 seconds over Tokyo. He managed to get them on board an aircraft carrier.
The Hornet?
And the Hornet, and take off and bomb Japan, which destroyed their sense of immunity from bombing attack, and so they had to keep a lot of defensive equipment on. But anyway, so I was in that course, and there were several who had been there for weeks or a couple of months more than I had. There were about 6 or 7 of us, and one day they asked me to be ready to go, and I was the last man on the lowest man on the totem pole, and they said no. Right field says they have to have somebody to go to Java to work with a squadron of B-25s that the Dutch Air Force has, and so we want you to be ready to go. And I said, okay, well, so the draft board had caught on to the fact that I was no longer in school, and
this is where my story is wrong.
my exemption was because I was in school, and here I was out of school, and I was working for Sperry Dart School, and so they said, no, this guy is A1, up for draft. And so the Bendix people called the right field and said, look, we've got just the man for you. He's all ready and highly trained and everything else is ready to go, but the draft board wants him. And they go, what's the name of his draft board? Where is it? Muskegon, Michigan. And so right field called the draft board, and the draft board said, well...
Dykstra, would that be a name, Dykstra?
Dykstra was the...
Anyway, they said, if he's out of the country in 15 days, okay, otherwise he's drafted. And
I didn't
so,
know that.
Yeah, so I had 15 days to get out of the country. And so they packed me up and sent me out to San Francisco, and was getting to day 10, day 11, day 12, and there was no transportation from San Francisco out to Hawaii, and from there on out to Java.
So,
And-
Papa's sister's daughter?
Had a boyfriend who was a sergeant in the Navy and who assigned the seats on the plane that went to Hawaii.
Which was a China Clipper, a real seaplane.
Pan
The
Am
old
China
Pan
Clipper.
Am China Clipper.
Yeah. And so he got me on plane, and on something like day 14, why I was aboard the Clipper, and
What was the rank of your fellow passengers?
they were
High.
yeah. You didn't ask questions at that point, but there were only 7 of us on board the plane.
Wow.
All the rest of it was taken up
You
with
took off out of
San
Hope.
Francisco. You go out in a little boat, and the Clipper was anchored out in the bay, and you just climbed on that little step wing, and from the step wing into the cabin, and nice silk brocade, wall coverings, and I say there were only 7 of us on the plane. You just sit face to face with a little table between it, because the plane was all loaded with radar equipment. And
Now, how'd you
14 hours later, we were in Hawaii.
Now, how'd you keep in touch with the family? For example, when Walter was off doing this, the family really know where he was, what was
Well, we
going on
got
with
letters,
him?
we got mail from him regularly.
Yeah,
So you'd send mail pretty
posted,
regularly?
Yeah, except that you didn't put a return address on it.
Right.
It just went through the
And then
mail
what would
service.
Frank think about,
The family really no longer existed as a family unit. When Normie went to the Air Corps, Walter was already out in the South Pacific. I was in midshipman school, and Mutti was at the Eleanor Club, and Papa was in Muskegon.
oh, when,
That was the end of
Now,
family
unless you
life,
spoke
and
to-
that would have been 1943.
No.
No, that was
Actually,
42,
family
42.
life ended, before that, family life ended when I got the summer job working for Mr. Kincaid, the photographer at Williams Bay, and then stayed on and worked for Starks on their farm. And you two were readers at Michigan School for the Blind, and you got me a job to come and read there because I could read German. And Mutti was working in Chicago.
Yeah.
So really, the family life broke up in
1941.
1941.
Just before World War II.
Yeah, where was Frank? Where did he live?
He
And-
stayed
and-
in
and when did
Muskegon.
Frank-
Stayed in
The family
Muskegon.
home? And-
He rented a little room.
Rented a room in a boarding hotel.
And stayed there for
For
the rest of his life?
Yeah,
And Max Benham took care of him.
yeah.
And was he able, I mean, when you said he took care of him, was he able to take care of himself? How, what, did
He
his mental
took-
I took
illness
care of him.
grow?
I took care of him.
Yeah.
This is not generally known. He would not accept any money from me. His pride would not allow that. But
He'd been
the
through that
city
once.
social services got the money from me. They asked for it and I gave it to them. And they funneled it through to him without his knowing it came from me.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
thought
I
it was
didn't
coming
think you
from
did.
welfare.
Yeah.
And so, what actually,
Actually.
what was the
just-
moment, go ahead.
No, just a little side thing. That was when the first, LP records came out, where you could get good
And
recording.
you wanted tape recording.
I bought, and a set of classical music, which I sent to him, because I realized that, music meant so much to him.
Now, did he accept that?
Love
And,
classical music.
Did he know it came from you?
I don't
Yes.
know, but anyway.
Yes, and he refused to use it.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Now, and how'd you find out about that?
Because I was on good terms with him then.
And so you knew that gift
I
had
knew
come?
that he had received it, I knew that he knew it came from Walt, and I knew that he refused. Because
never-
he thought
I never knew that.
his attitude was, Walt's just trying to bribe me.
And Ben Walsh, you never knew that?
No, never knew